Do you know if Brad is calling in?
No, he's not. I know that.
Maybe we should announce that we are starting.
It's way too early. Except at 3 p.m. Careful, you're under new AD management.
All right, it is the correct one. Okay, I got the meeting. I started the meeting minutes thing with the thing. Did you see that?
No, I'm behind you.
Can you pick it up? I'm gonna start. Oh, yeah.
I think you have to beat the mic.
Have to do what?
Beat the mic so that people else have it in.
Like that?
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Well, I was actually here. I had written the slide up in mine. All right. It's the NFS version 4 working group meeting. Starting. Yep. Can't hear me.
People online can't hear you.
I meant the mic can't hear me from 1 foot off.
Maybe they'll go
Hi. I'm Brian Pulowski. This is the NFS version 4 working group meeting. Is the sound coming out okay to remote participants? Please let me know. I'm worried that we have too many microphones on the room. Can you hear me well? We're good? Okay, great. Let me go back.
Thank you for moving those.
Okay, so this is Brian Plasky again. Thomas Haynes is with me. He'll be taking minutes. Do you have minutes?
I have no clue how to get there.
From the meeting materials thing, click on the notepad for NFS version 4. There is.
Okay, it won't let me edit.
But
now it will.
Okay.
You may have to log into the note taking tool.
Yeah, I logged in and then it took me to another screen, and then when I went back, it let me edit. So.
We're having technical difficulties. No, we're fine now. So I was just going to say that Tom Haynes is with me here, taking minutes. I'll be driving the slides. All the presenters are on site. Right? Yes. And I'll take minutes while you're talking, Tom. And Dave Novak is not here today, and he's not in remotely either. Thank you, all the remote participants, for joining us. And again, if you have a problem with audio and you can't hear something or we're not being clear, just send a message over the thing. And you're doing the hand raising, Richard? And I can't pronounce your last name. Richard N. is going to be looking and monitoring for people that want to ask questions remotely. Okay? So, it's Tuesday. Everybody in the room is masked up, except for the guy in the back row.
Each wear mask in the room. Oh,
Man, I'm a beanie. Okay, and I have a beautiful butterfly mask. If you see that.
N95.
You have one?
I got one.
You do one.
In the room here, N95 masks or KN95 masks are required. Blue sheets are signed when you log in to Meet Echo for all you people already logged in, and the local people have also logged in too, I hope. I'm going to touch on the note well, and then we'll do an agenda bash. At the end of the agenda is a discussion and finish. One big thing, we're not going to cover this document, which is under Dave Novak. He's not available today. I'm going to take that to the mail list. And I need to, after this meeting and talking, as we go through the discussion today, I'll send out to the mail list an update to the overall document status and where we stand from the comments coming out today and any follow-ups after this meeting. We'll take it to the list. There's the note well. Sorry, I had another one. And that, hold on. I didn't want to go into this other one here. The session is being recorded, everyone. So everything I've said has been recorded for posterity. You signed in. I'm just looking at the general rules here from the slides I can't get to see, you to see. Yeah. Okay, that's it. That's enough. Back to the regular scheduled program. So everything you say is kind of recorded. Property by IETF is a very simple summary of the note well, but there are a lot of documents below, by the way, which is very useful in the links. If you haven't looked through the documents for the meeting and IETF sessions and IETF work, they actually do change once in a while. So you might want to refresh your memory if you haven't. But you saw this when you registered. All right, this is the agenda. A little bit over on my, just a little bit. No, well, agenda bashing. Is there any additions from anyone? We have Christoph covering layout issues. Chuck's going to do security and RDMA. Tom is going to be talking about issues with the open and delegation operations, and then client recovery. Okay.
So on the agenda bashing, I thought like, I mean, the last one you have, like, what's the roadmap of the working group would need more than 20 minutes to actually come to a prospective conclusion. So I was thinking like if we can run some of the discussions really short and have more time allocation for the last discussion, if that is possible.
I can give you 10 minutes out of my two
Yeah,
presentations.
okay, great. Just for the presenters to think about it, okay?
Did you say your name when you got the microphone?
Yeah, sorry, Jahed, I said Jahed. Jahed transported again.
Thanks. And then sorry, I really do have to, and then I clear you after you talk. I just remove you. I'll do it. I got it. Okay. Perfect. So no changes. Anybody? Updates? We're going to try to move forward, and then we have the discussion at the end. Okay, that was a no. All right, up is Christoph. Yeah, now I got to switch horses. Hold on. There. Hold on, finding your slides. You are, where are you? Second to last. This is you, right?
That's
NVMe mapping?
me.
Get closer to the microphone. Or pick it up.
Yep. Okay, so the NVMe mapping for the SCSI layout, and we could straight jump to the next slide because that one doesn't have a lot of information. So background story is 5 years ago, we got RFC 8154 published, which is basically a revision of the block layout that ties deeply into SCSI concept, most importantly, persistent reservations and device identification. It turns out just around the same time, the whole storage industry is all on the NVMe hype that does the same thing, just different. And we somehow need to support that as well. And because of that, I pretty soon after started a document that explains how to use that layout with NVMe in a way that doesn't change the on-the-wire protocol, but requires a lot of normative language, how to map NVMe to SCSI concepts that fundamentally are the same, but expressed very differently. And the way the initial version did that was by referencing a NVM Express NVMe document that's called the SCSI translation reference that does this mapping, but it does it rather sloppily and isn't really up to the standards that the IETF has for normative documents. And because of that, that document lingered for a while. We can jump to the next slide. And I know Dave and Soren did another take on it, but not a whole lot of things happened for years. So this year, after Chuck started prodding, we put a lot of work into it, like Chuck and Dave and me, and especially Dave did a lot of work in addition to me. So we know.
I think you were most of the
Yeah, but you also did a whole lot of work, and Chuck also did some nice work, and Dave. So we finally got a team instead of just people doing it, and put out a new version of it, which gets rid of that reference to the NVMe STLR document and instead puts in its own normative language. And I think we're more or less ready to have working group adoption for a standards track document. We have like 2 open issues, and that goes to the next slide. So one is the on-the-wire protocol has the concept of a designator for the device IDs. That is basically that binary blob that identifies the device, what type is it, as SCSI has a bunch of different types. So the two of the 3 types relevant in NVMe, actually 3 of the 3 types defined in NVMe, map one-to-one to the concepts in SCSI. So what the current document does is it reuses them and doesn't do any on-the-wire changes. So Dave brought up an idea that we would use different identifiers to show that we're talking about an NVMe device, which reduces the amount, the scope, how the client has to search for the device, and might be a little easier to understand for administrators or DevOps. The downside is, instead of just being a mapping document, this actually adds new XDR on the wire. I mean, basically just 2 new code points, but it's still a change of the on-the-wire protocol. And the other question that's kind of related to it is, do we want to add a new UUID designator type? So NVMe and SCSI both added a way to define device identification with an IETF with a 4122 UUID. And we don't have that in the previous RFC yet because SCSI hadn't added it at the time. SCSI was adding it right around the time, and NVMe also added it around the time. So if we want to change the wire protocol anyway, we should support that as well, and preferably also for SCSI and not just for NVMe. And that's basically the 2 interesting items we have left open. And otherwise, I think we're ready for nitpicking review and bashing the document into submission.
Are there, sorry if you can hear me, are there any questions? I guess I just want to say I disagree with exactly one thing you said. You said, you started off by saying there's this fad or something like that of NVMe. So the thing is that it's probably become a lot more important moving forward for this type of application than a lot of other things because of NVMe and the fabric stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the technical discussion because I think it's often more religious than technical, but it's a fact that in shared storage, NVMe is a really big thing now.
Yeah, so this, I do know that my company's interested in this work, and I know that obviously your stuff that you're working on, and I think I've talked to other people who are interested in this work.
Oh, and just to add it, so an implementation of this draft. So I have it for the Linux client and server, and on the server, it's about 20 lines of code, and on the client, it's 2.
The version without the protocol changes.
The version without the protocol changes, yes.
I'm sorry, I got Chuck Lieber at the microphone.
Hi, Chuck Lieber. A couple of comments. I would like to propose moving this to a working group document. I think somebody has to do that, so let me do that. The second comment is right now it's an informational. The status of the document is informational. I would like to see it become a standards track document because it does have some normative statements in it that I think really don't belong in an informative document. So those are my 2 comments.
Okay, thank you. The chair recognizes, even with his mask on, David Black.
I'm in deep trouble. So I completely agree with everything Chuck just said. In addition, having been the source of some of the open issues, I'm going to agree with where the draft currently is. Let's get this document done quickly with no change to the wire protocol. And then if somebody sees value in the UUID, bring in a separate draft to add the UUID.
I'm taking notes while we're talking. Okay, got that. And the chair.
Richard Schaffenegger. Just reiterate, I haven't heard anything that would block this from not being adopted, and quite the opposite. I would also think that having this document on the standards track would be very valuable.
All right.
Can I get a virtual hum or a hum here? Move to working group, standards track, no protocol change, and let's just get this out the door. Okay, that was the best.
So Brian, if you hum, the online participants cannot hum. So
Yeah.
there is a raise of hand tool. Use that one. Everybody on the online and on-site can actually vote for it.
Yes,
So ask your question and use the tool. I think that's.
Yeah, hold on. I've lost my hand. Yeah, hold on. I lost my hand. Got it. Sorry, I lost my chat tool. I'm doing it. Come in. No. All right. That is, are you on
They
it?
joined just for that.
I had it and I lost it.
Yeah. Easiest thing to do rather than trying to get the show of hands tool to work would be simply state the proposition. Let's see if anybody objects.
Does anybody object to moving this document to standards track and taking it on in the working group with no protocol changes? I'm not seeing any objections. Is that the case? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next up is Chuck Lieber. Discuss security RPC with TLS. Let me pull these slides up.
I'll try to stay on the pink. Thanks.
Oh shit! Sorry. I dropped it. I did it. I thought I was going to take it to the meetings.
Okay, next slide. The publication of this particular document has been a long time in coming. Um, it's always been a problem of these three normative documents listed on this slide not being ready yet. These are normatively cited in this particular document. The two of them at the bottom of the slide, 9146 and 9147, are now published. So those are no longer blocking this document. The kitten document is now in OFF 48, at least when I checked a week and a half ago, which means it's well on its way, should be published very, very soon, within weeks or less. So this document is now in ref, meaning we're this close to being OFF 48. And OFF 48, it just means, for those who don't know, that's just the authors making final comments before publication. Next slide. There are still these two matters that were discussed probably 18 months ago. And I did mock these up in the GitHub repo for this document. So if anybody wants to go and look at them, they're available in the GitHub version of this. We haven't made any changes to the actual queued document that will happen during OFF 48. I should say I did check to see how long this document has been waiting in the RFC editor's queue. It's been 88 weeks. This is not the longest awaiting document in the queue. Right now, there's one that's been waiting since 2015. So I count us as being lucky. I think this is not too much of a price to pay for it. So next slide. I just wanted to mention the implementations of this standard that we have so far. I think 3 of these are already listed in the actual draft. The FreeBSD implementation is both client and server. DAISY has a client and server user space implementation, which is based on Java. Hammerspace, I'm told, has both client and server, although it's not for NFS right now. I'm working on a Linux client prototype, which is for NFS. And Ben Connington has produced an Nginx module that can act as a front end for a box standard NFS server of any flavor, and do the RPC with TLS translation in front of it. And he's recently told me that he's put it on GitHub, I believe, so that it's open source and people can look at it. And he intends to ask for the Nginx folks to merge it. And he's actually online, so if I said something wrong, he can speak up and tell me the right version of that. Next slide. We've had decent community testing exposure. At the most recent one, we had all of the implementations present from the last slide that I mentioned. And we were interoperating, so that's going well. Next slide. A little bit about the Linux client implementation I'm working on. It's a prototype. There are a number of issues that need to be hashed out with our upstream fellows, specifically in the TLS handshake mechanism. Right now, the prototype uses an upcall, which means that the kernel requests a TLS handshake from a user agent. It doesn't do it itself. The user agent then calls into a standard TLS library to do the handshake. We support a new mount option. We've discussed among, was there a question? Okay. We discussed among the various implementers what this administrative interface will look like, and this is sort of what we've come up with. So we'll just add a mount option that allows you to specify TLS or not. And the prototype is available on in my repo on GitHub and on kernel.org. Next slide. So last we talked about this, there were some other standard actions that we were considering. For example, how Exchange ID and Friends could use TLS peer authentication in the same way that they use Kerberos today, Kerberos principles. There hasn't been any progress there. And the other thing we had sort of extended conversations about was how servers can tell clients that if the client wants to use AuthSys, it must use TLS of some form to protect the transport. We've had a couple of proposals in that arena, but they're not well liked. I had one called RPC TLS pseudo-flavors. I've gotten 2 thumbs down on that one, so I'm going to let that document expire, and we can continue to explore basically not wire changes, but rather just conventions for servers to communicate their security policy requirements via existing protocol elements rather than adding new ones. And we can take that conversation to the list. Next slide. Oh, I'm done.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I do get previews over here. All right, and so what's the ask here? What's the?
This is a progress report implementation status. I guess I'm asking whether people agree that letting RPC TLS pseudo-flavors expire gracefully is what we would like to do, and then continue the conversation on soliciting other proposals for that requirement about servers, NFS servers, indicating that they want stronger transport layer security for AuthSys.
Okay, I got it too.
I know that's a long.
No, I got. So first, let pseudo-flavors expire. Any objection to that? Online, can you check in, Richard?
Should we hear from Ben Kadek first?
Sure.
Yeah, just to mention real quick, the Kitten TLS 1.3 channel bindings document was literally published as an RFC during this session, so it's RFC 9266 now.
Yay!
So that should free you up to get into Auth 48 for this one.
Thank you, Ben.
Oh, very cool. Thank you. Oh, that's on the bottom. So I don't think it was an objection there. No, I think nobody objected. The next thing was let's take this to the list and discuss how do we handle this in just description?
Yeah, Mr. Novak and Rick Macklem both had some ideas about how they wanted to go. Rick's proposal was, he had a couple of, he used some pre-existing protocol elements for both NFSV3 and NFSV4 servers to indicate requirements for transport layer security. So we should probably just reinvigorate that conversation on the mailing list.
Okay. And there was a third thing. That's where
That's good enough.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Anything else online in room? Okay. Thanks, Chuck. Ready? Oh, we are going to do the next one, which is surprisingly Chuck Cleaver, RPC over RDMA. Let me pull them up.
Sure, and go right to the second slide.
Right.
Not sure why we even bother with title slides.
Because we're just that kind of people. Called being human.
Well, for me, the title slide and the supplemental material are for people who are looking at these online after the fact. So I've been working on this version 2 of RPC over RDMA. I did a little prototyping about a year ago. It's very limited in scope and hasn't really changed since the last time I presented on this topic. Next slide. The concern a year ago was that if we wanted to support message chaining properly, we really need to have a full a full-on flow control protocol built into RPC over RDMA. We don't have that in version 1. So over the last year, I've worked with John Aguiar to fix that, to rectify that. We have it. The description is written in section 4.2.1 now. I don't think there's been any further review of that, but I believe it addresses all the concerns that we had about flow control. So that part of the protocol, I think, is now ready. Next slide. Dave Novak had a concern that we can't expect the IESG to sanction a new version of a protocol that doesn't address security, especially transport layer security, and RPC over RDMA doesn't have any security in it. So his proposal was to add a mechanism in the protocol to exchange certificate material, well, authentication material. I would rather see us build on existing security protocols that are more sophisticated, like TLS-V1.3. So that we have underneath RPC over RDMA, the transport of the RDMA, verbs, et cetera, are protected in the same way that TLS protects communications on TCP socket. Next slide. So I guess it goes without saying that the IETF doesn't have any authority over InfiniBand, Rocky, OPA, but it does have authority over IWARP. And we could specify IWARP on Quick, or we could specify IWARP on TLS. I suggested this to Tom Talpe recently, and he directed me to section 5.4.2 of RFC 5042. Which I've read several times, and I don't find it convincing. That's not something we need to go into here, but I just thought maybe it would be interesting to consider specification of DDP and RDMAP on Quick, but maybe that's more than we ever want to take on. So at this point. Yeah, so I don't know what to, it's an open question of how we will deal with transport layer security for RPC over RDMA if we want to continue work on this protocol, which I will get to in a moment. But first, Dan Black.
The layering on Quick might not be anywhere near as bad as you think it would be, because the time that we did IWARP, which is on MPA and DDP, we also did a fairly quick mapping of that onto SCTP. Now, I guess what I'm not clear about is what the goal of this exercise is. Are we trying to write something that'll get it past the IESG, or are we trying to spec something that's likely to get deployed?
Yes.
I remain confused.
I think both. I would like to see something that is useful to people. We certainly do need to guarantee that the ISG, and especially sector, is not going to complain about what we're proposing.
Okay, so David Black again. I suspect we're going to wind up having to get into a discussion of what we expect to see in the hardware data paths, because that's going to be a strong influence over what's deployable.
Want to recognize Tom?
Yeah. Tom.
Hi. Sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Chuck, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of concerns about putting RPC over RDMA in charge of security, in that RDMA will be basically transferring, encrypted bits. So the software layer of RPC RDMA has to decrypt it. So you lose some performance. That's not a very compelling architecture.
Agreed.
Okay. Second, there's Rocky, which has no security whatsoever. IWARP, which referred to IPsec. IWARP over Quick, I agree with David, it's a tractable problem. I think it's a fairly significant problem. We
Yeah.
deferred that work because at the time we wanted to do it a few years ago, quick wasn't fully specified. Now that it is, maybe not the datagram service part of it, but you know, there's a possibility now. But the discussion at the time was to have a quick extension specifically for RDMA. And that's a bit more of a problem than just simply mapping RDMA to a quick stream. So I think there's some thinking to be done there. But all those would be much better solutions than slapping TLS into RPC over RDMA, in my opinion.
Totally agree.
Well, I'm up for it. I mean, you know that I'm still engaged on IWARP, even though the industry seems to be drifting slowly away from it. I think it would be a great effort for IETF.
Yeah, I'm happy to entertain more conversation about this on the mailing list or privately. Go ahead.
All right.
Okay,
So Richard,
Richard.
just a high level observation. I would strongly refrain from doing any private security whatsoever in a protocol at this level. So I'm sorry that he's not here, but I would really not support that. How the layering at the end of the day then is done, yes, there will be secure performance implications if you do it with RDMA over TLS. You can do the layering the other way around, so that you can do some hardware offloading there. People that really want to have security, they typically don't care about performance that much, in my opinion. Well, they do care, but you know, depending on who's stronger, then is getting the thing that they want.
Color me a Pollyanna, but you know, I like to think that in someday in the near future that we can have both security and performance, especially with offload solutions. So I'm optimistic about that.
Security will always be a bump in the road. So
yeah.
But anyway, there's my main point was not do any custom solution to this problem here in this group, but use a standard industry standard security protocol. And again, how the layering is then done ultimately is that's something that the group needs to decide.
Yeah, that's my personal view as well.
okay. I have Christoph Helwig on the mic, and then Tom Telby.
Yeah, so I don't think security and performance really are that far apart, right? Both with existing TLS offloads, with SSDs, we absolutely know there's hardware encryption engines that do line rate without any problems, but for that, we need a good enough standard that they can implement. Which brings me to the next question. Which,
I'll step aside.
Huh?
I'll just step aside.
Yeah. And someone's going to specify this, and I don't think this is the NFS people. And given that Storm has disappeared, and I know there's a lot of discussions about this working group disappearing, I think we need to have a good conversation about maybe grouping that kind of work in a new working group that includes a broader group of people with applicable skills.
One more slide.
I guess I'm next.
Oh, sorry, Tom. I got distracted.
Okay. So Christoph, I totally agree. We want the broadest skills. When NFSV4 was going to take over RDMA, the discussion was that all the RDMA experts were already hanging around NFSV4. So to the extent that we branch out of NFS and RDMA uses, we need the additional expertise that's present in IETF. Like if we go for quick, obviously we engage the quick group. But Richard, if somebody deploys RDMA, they absolutely want performance. That's the reason to deploy RDMA. And security is mandatory to implement these days. Nobody can design or deploy an insecure protocol. So you need both performance and security, absolutely, at all times.
Unfortunately, I think I need to move on. So,
Okay, thanks, Tom.
next slide. It's recently come to my attention that Read Plus is kind of more critical than I thought. Originally, we looked at Read Plus and said that's going to be difficult to fit into the RDMA paradigm because the client doesn't know in advance what the reply is going to look like. It could look like a single content data segment, or it could be some set of content data and content whole, and there's no predicting. And so it was impossible for the client to be able to set up a reasonable set of RDMA registered memory to receive replies in general. So our upper layer bindings have therefore not permitted any result data items in Read Plus to be eligible for direct data placement. However, it's been pointed out to me that certain file systems will start doing whole instantiation when reads happen over unwritten extents. So Read Plus is a really good idea for large sparse files where you want to keep the sparseness. So I think and of course we do want to serve large sparse files over RDMA. Those are important, of course, in HVC as well as in the cloud for virtual disks. So I'd like to just sort of throw this out here and say we need to think a little bit more carefully about how Read Plus needs to work over RDMA. Either we need a convention that explains how to make it work, at least for the simple cases, or we actually need to extend either RDMA or NFSV 4.2 Read Plus to make this work correctly. And this is something that can be deferred to the list. Next slide. We had some performance goals for V2 when we started this project a few years ago. And I think that most of them have been met. They'll either be met by the PNFS layout type that Christoph described earlier, or they will be met in practice with the private data extension that we did in RFC 8797. So I think the urgency for our version 2 is less than it used to be. And my concern is, as it was last time we presented, that we don't have more than one version 2 prototype right now. I don't see more than that happening. So there really isn't an interoperability issue there. There are loads of other projects in front of the working group right now that I think are higher priority, especially TLS related issues. And there's really only one person who's available to prototype, author, review, and perhaps steward this document. So here's where I do put this in front of the group. Maybe we should just let this work expire for now and leave it to come back at some later point when we might have more resources to bring to bear.
Do you want?
I'm interested in opinions, thoughts, comments. Rotten fruit.
Tom, Talpi.
I think letting it expire is the wrong term. You just kind of let it sit, right? It's
Will
effective.
expire.
Well, physically the draft will expire, but
Yeah.
it's still out there and it can still be discussed and we can reactivate it when it makes sense. So yeah, what you described makes good sense. The terminology of expire doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I was referring strictly to the mechanism rather than to
Yeah.
anything.
If
that
you're going to
has
give it up.
moral implications.
Okay. Well, drafts expire all the time. Don't be afraid of an expired draft. And it's not necessary to refresh drafts. I see people doing that. They make no changes just to keep it active. It's not necessary.
Okay.
Oops. Sorry, I went back in the queue. I don't want to do that.
Wait. Oh, okay. I'm going to kick you out.
I clicked the wrong button. Sorry.
Bye. Yeah, you scared Christoph. Christoph was going to come up and say something, but then you just scared him off. That's Christoph Alec.
So I don't think Read Plus really is a protocol problem. I know we have some implementation problems on the Linux side, but Read plus can always do a short read, so you can always just return one chunk of data in one hole and let the client retry, which I guess for most cases is simply the right thing to do. Sorry.
We
Chuck
can,
Lever's nodding his head sagely.
no, I wouldn't call it sagely, but we should talk later. There's some more subtle issues about direct data placement that make me a little concerned, but if we can find a way of making it work, I think the benefits of not triggering whole instantiation are real and strong and important. So.
All right.
So back to the question of
Yeah. Any objection to letting this draft expire in the IETF sense, and if needed, we will pick up the work in the future. But at this point, Chuck is saying that the gains are not there to warrant the effort nor the resources to take forward the V2 RPC already made draft. Any objection to dropping work and freeing up bandwidth so we can focus on more important things? Nothing. Thank you.
okay, let's see what's on the next slide.
Okay, let's-
That's for, I think we should remove the milestone for delivering these documents because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think we just agreed to that.
Okay, good. Next slide. Okay, done.
Thank you, Chuck, for being clear. Yep, doing it.
If I've ever heard that
Get it.
before.
Could you get a chair for the microphone? Okay, so, Tom, delegation, hold on, find the document, Focus, Pulaski, focus. This one, right? Layouts impeding file recovery?
No, the other one.
Other one. No, sorry. They're out of order. Right, never mind, I got it.
And I just noticed when I got up here that I didn't provide my email, but you can figure it out. So delegation of state IDs, can we go to the next slide, please? So I call it delegation of state IDs or open because it's mainly about the delegation of attributes from the server to the clients. Most get atters are done, but while the file is opened by the client, so we want to remove the client from asking the server about the attributes. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd give some dates. We first published it in April 2018. We've had Hammerspace has had a private server implementation since that time. We've also had an open source client implementation since that time. And the Linux client maintainer kind of is I want to say hard ass. Well, I'll say hard ass about this. And he doesn't like to take changes that haven't been IETF standard track documents because it clears up IPR concerns, and open standards equates to open source, right? So I'm trying to get this him to push the changes upstream, as they call it, and he won't do this until I get this more solid. Next slide, please. And so, the work is, the document's written. I've let it slide for a year or two while COVID was going on. And I want to push it into working group last call, get a document shepherd, et cetera, and push it on. That's it.
Last slide.
Yeah.
So basically the ask here is there any objection to taking the state ID document?
Yeah.
Forward to a working group last call and attaching a document shepherd to it? Any Any objections?
Yes.
Okay. Any objections on one? Okay. Up. Tom Talfi.
Question. Tom, you said there's an implementation in the client. Is there also an implementation in the server in Linux?
So the server is the Hammerspace private server. So
Okay.
yeah.
Is there any other implementer interested in this feature?
I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone who's interested in it.
Okay.
It sounds trite, but we're the only.
Yeah, I know
company
it's not your responsibility to convince others, but I'm just curious how broad the interest in this might be. If it's been idle for a year or two, one might ask, is it going to reawaken outside of Hammerspace? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I don't have any objection. I'm just raising the question because it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. So we still stand with no objection to moving forward. All right. Thank you. Sorry, before I forget. Okay. Next, you're doing next one, right?
Yeah.
This is the one I was going to grab before. I think.
So my next presentation is about layouts impeding file recovery. If we go to the next slide, please. So the problem statement is when a server reboots, we have a grace period that allows the client to reclaim open files. The server doesn't necessarily know which files are opened by the client. So the client is informed that the server is rebooted, and it knows it has a set amount of time to reclaim those files if it's interested in reclaiming them. And it can use the claim previous with the open which is typically only valid during that reclaim period, to say, I had this file open, I want to reclaim it and keep it open. And we have that, but we never considered what happens if the client had encountered errors before the server restarted, right? And if the client does this, it doesn't have enough state to inform the server that errors had occurred. Next slide, please. And so what happens when these errors occur? And that depends on whether we're strongly or loosely coupled, right? So a strongly coupled system is one in which the MDS and the DS have a private it's private protocol in which they can communicate state changes and errors that have occurred and everything. A loosely one is one in which we use a storage protocol like NFS in order to communicate those changes, and that's very limiting, right? So the a loosely coupled system is one pretty much which you have several different proprietary code bases for the servers. So with the strongly coupled, the MDS already knows the error from the DS, right? It can report it. With loosely coupled, it depends on the client to report the error. So you might report it with a layout return or a layout error, but we just restarted. So the state IDs for the layouts are no longer valid after the restart. Next slide, please. So can't we just get a new layout and then report the error? Well, again, we have a complication if we have client-side mirroring. Actually, even without client-side mirroring, the server may have moved the file, the data instances of the file to different data servers. So it's no longer possible to report errors that had occurred. Next slide, please. So what's the importance of reporting the errors? Well, if we report the errors, it allows, with client-side mirroring, it allows the MDS to pick which one of the instances are valid and should be resilvered. If it doesn't have that, then it has to scan all the files, assume all the ones that weren't reported as errors may be an error, and go across all the files. And the cost of it depends on the size of the files and the number of open files. I feel like I'm going fast, but I always do. Next slide, please. So I'll present two potential solutions, and of course I picked one already, but I'm just trying to show that we did consider this. We could introduce new operations which would allow the server and the client to agree that the server has this capability, and then the client knows that since the server is advertising this ability, it can then use that ability. Or we could use a special state ID on layout return and define some new semantics during the grace period. I picked define the new semantics with the special state ID. Next slide. So the special state ID is defined not to be valid with layout return, and if it is presented with layout return, the server returns NFS4 error bad state ID. But if it's inside the grace period, we could have it. We could understand that the client is saying, I encountered an error when I was trying to when I was writing to this layout. I want to report it, and if you're capable of using that information, use it. If not, go ahead. So if the server was inside the grace period was returned bad state ID, the client would know that the feature was not supported. There's no need for layout error because layout error implies that you're going to reuse the layout state ID afterwards, and we're not going to. And then there's no need to reclaim the file because the client has already said, here's what's happened with the file. I don't need it open. All right. Next slide, please. The big question is where to put this. I could tack it on to Dell State ID, but I don't like that because Dell State ID is pretty close to being done, and I don't think it fits in with it. All right. It is about open files, but that's kind of stretching it for me. I could do a new document, but it starts a new cycle. It's only 2 to 3 pages, and the next topic in the working is about what are we going to do with the working group. So I guess the open question I have is where do I put it? And if other people are interested in, as Tom Talpy would point out.
I'm trying to think about a phrase, a question here. What's your ask? You phrase a question. Tom Talpy joined the queue. All right, Tom, you phrase a question.
Is the big question. I'll leave that to you. I was just going to ask Tom, if it's only 2 or 3 pages, what does it say? What kind of normative statements does it make? I'm sorry, I haven't read.
Statements about what, if we were to go back a couple of slides, about the presence of the special state ID during the grace period versus not in the grace period, and how the client can determine whether or not the server supports this feature.
And those are musts. They're not just, figure it out kind of a thing. I don't know. It seems kind of heavy-handed to make it so normative somehow, but okay.
No, I appreciate the feedback. I mean, I'm struggling with where this goes myself. Did you come up with?
Well, I guess my suggestion is if you can find a way to make it subnormative, if it's sort of a behavior, it's a way of implementing it, then it's easy, right? You just publish a simple note.
Okay.
I can't form a question. I think my suggestion is to take a step back and make a proposal, unless to the working group alias in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
But Chuck Lever, please.
Chuck Lever, I agree with that. Following up on what Mr. Talby said, making this a convention seems appropriate rather than something that's normative. It seems pretty straightforward for a client to try this. And if the server says, what the fuck, the client goes, okay, this isn't working. I fall back to whatever the old, and otherwise it will do something more reasonable.
All right.
So in other words, it wouldn't require any action by the working group at all.
Okay.
Just a thought.
But all right, I'll talk later. I'm so used to normative documents. I don't go with the other workflow.
Okay, so you got Tom Talby. You hit your button.
I wanted to say one thing back to Tom. A normative document states a protocol that needs to be interoperable by everybody in a specific way. And this doesn't sound like it's quite the same thing. So it may not even need a document. It may just be the way you implement it. You know what I mean?
Again, trying to get into the Linux client code base.
Oh,
requires
same deal as the previous one. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Hence the order of the documents.
Well, so, it's always better to be clear and write a document. I'm not trying to say get around it or anything like that. It's just if it doesn't rise to a requirement that everybody must do, even if it's optional, it's like maybe this isn't really a protocol question. Okay. It's just food for thought. That's all. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, I still think we're at the, and you're gonna noodle, frame, and take to the alias within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, got that written down. I think I got it written down. Okay. Weeks. All right, that brings us, I think, to the end of the presentations. Hold on, let me pull up my little document here. Yeah, that's the end of the prepared presentations. Now, you have a little bit under an hour left in the meeting. This is an time for an open discussion on the next steps and work, what's open items in the working group, and how do we deal with them and generally frame what we're going to do here. I would hope that Tom's going to help me out a lot here, by the way.
You would.
Yes. I would.
Yeah. I actually hope Steve was going to help us out because he's asked us whether or not the working group needs to exist. I'll be blunt.
Yeah, so that's actually, all right, let me try. So, so we've been negligent in meeting our deliverables to our stated milestones on the description of our working group. For those of you who have been involved with this for a while, this is not a surprise, given sometimes our change in direction and just distractions. But I think at this point, we're coming up to a question of, I'm just gonna use as an example, but it's not the most important thing, but this discussion we had about the RPC over RDMA, the V2 document, whether it was absolutely required that we complete that work at this time, and is it holding us up from actually delivering on implementations and making things just work with what we have and what we know. So we decided basically to put that on the shelf until something would make us go back, reopen that discussion, and because there's something critical that we need to do in RPC over RDMA. I think that's kind of the discussion we had. So I think what I'm looking here at the working group is to just come up with a list of must complete items, must do, and define those, attach dates for them, identify the ones where we're struggling to apply the people necessary to complete the document work. Pretty much everything in the IETF is document work for the most part. That's all I care about. But backing the document work is sometimes, from our side, implementation work to prove out the ideas. I don't know that the implementation work is what's holding us back at this time. I think what we have is a pile of documentation work. Probably the biggest overhang we have is likely the completion of the BIS document. That's just a bunch of clarifications. It's just a lot of work. So I need some help here. Sorry, I do need some help here, Tom.
Do we have a list of if you could show the screen of the documents that are currently in the queue for the working group? Well, we want to see what's.
So,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
so yeah, Jahad here, Transport AD with my AD hat on. I can tell you like what what I see happening here, and then which is basically what you said, Brian. I mean, like that's this working was like really really. I mean, I have seen like a couple of times that people have finding reviewers like the for the BIS one, which seems to be when I took over this working group seems to be very important. But then I failed to see like anybody and have any interest in it. And there are a couple of documents there. They're out there. I have been asking the like whoever I know cares about actually like how much it is critical for implementation to get it done. I didn't get a really right answer. So that's like this is an I understand this is like historically like really long. It has been there. This working has been there for quite a long time, and you guys are really. I see it today like you know each other. You work together. You have done a tremendous amount of work, but now I see this one actually really declining and failed to deliver. That's the one part. Another part is like. When it comes to errata and all these things, I have seen like we have like huge amount of errata on NFSV4. I have talked to 3 past edits, like what happened to those, like why didn't anybody care to clear those errata, at least for document hold up for document update that could have been like verified errata and waiting for something to happen. That didn't happen. So I also wanted to see like how the working group actually think and how much that's critical because this is a huge amount of errata existing. The other thing is like how we're running the meetings and all these things, but that I can definitely work with on my chairs to make it more workable. So like, for example, like the BIS document that has been like this like documented and Dev had worked on it. It's not even in the working group documentation list. So I had to push it for like, okay, call for a working group adaptation. It got adapted, but the director doesn't tell me anything like that. So I think all these things is happening, like whether there is the energy in this working group to actually carry on the rest of the work, meet the thing, and or what should we do? That's basically what I want to hear from you guys. And I'll just shut up and let you guys to talk.
Why don't I believe you? Anyway, so is there a way, David, you're the Zen master on this stuff. Is there a way to show a screen on BDECO? I have the document list in my. share screen. Do you really want to share my screen? I changed my mind. Jesus Christ. What the hell just happened? It looks like I'm in an infinite well of.
You did not share the meeting. There you go.
Wait. Can I do it again? Oh, okay. So, yes. Allow. Okay. That is a very good. Hold on. I'm going to screen snap that. Okay. Got it. That looks like my entire life right now. Did that do it? That did it. Okay. So, I think one of our issues is just, frankly, let's just be clear here. A minor issue we have is updating this page. Yeah, that's not actually the problem, but it doesn't help that this page is not up to date because that just makes people confused. So there's the documents we discussed today up on top, the TLS, the V2 RDMA, open files, and yeah, so that's both the ULB and the RDMA documents, which we are going to shelve until something changes. But it's these bottom documents, I think, that we're mostly talking about. There's a list of internet drafts. We touched on Quick a bit today. I'm not sure if that is, let's ignore that. The big document here is the NFSV4 version 1 minor protocol. This document, I believe, is the one that is being reworked and addresses the erratas, I believe, I think is where those are appearing. And I would just put out that Dave Novak needs help, and I would have to figure out how to make that work. I think Dave owns that document, and he's been soldiering on a lot on this.
So this is Richard. What's curious to me is if this is a BIS document, why is it still as a individual document? It should basically go straight into the adopted into the working group, and the working group can then decide a number of editors. So even people that have no technical inside knowledge, and I just remember I should keep my mouth shut.
What? I'm just thinking that like I'm Pinocchio because I feel like my nose is hitting the microphone, but it's my mask. So, no. So Richard, that was an offer to help if we move. Oh, you're in the first row.
Yeah, but they didn't provide any tables.
David.
I'm not dithering about whether to talk about this. So
and Soren, I'll get to you after this.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, and you didn't want to do that, BP.
Yeah, I know, but I have to.
But the tunnel vision is such fun. So what you're seeing here is a fairly small community that in the past has managed to generate the largest docs the IETF has ever seen. I got ribbed for iSCSI being 300 pages, and this group beat me by 2 country miles.
It's like smart.
Yes. Like I said, 2 country miles. And you might be looking at one of the things that may be going on here is there's definitely enthusiasm for smaller docs. I mean, give Christoph and I and everybody else interested in the green light, and that SCSI layout update draft will be in your hands before the end of the year, no problem. However, ask us to go do the maintenance on one of the main NFS protocol specs, and suddenly we have other priorities. I don't know what to say about this aside from the fact that yeah, the specs need maintenance. Yeah, there ought to be some interesting stuff done there, but the extent I can see enthusiasm, or speaking for myself, I can hear enthusiasm. It's for this small stuff like the SCSI layout update that makes a big difference.
So just Jahed, just to respond.
Your name is
Jahed. I, why you keep asking me? I mean,
Because there are
I-
people online, like you told
yeah,
me.
I told it. I told it before I talk. Maybe I should talk loud and about my name, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Again, Jahid, your transport AD. So yeah, just to reply to that one, because even if you were like laughing about it, but you made a good point, right? I mean, this is a small working group trying to take a like 600 page documentation update and all this thing. And my question to this, like, if this is so important, why there is no much progress in it? So if this is like really important thing to do, the beast thing, do we have the industry ready to, I mean, when this is published, they will be like updating their servers and clowns to the new version that will updating. I don't see that enthusiasm, I mean, into the work. I know this is important. I know this is a maintenance is important, but well, I don't see any visible indication that's the case. And suddenly you said like we have now a smaller document that becomes more important. Maybe those will, if we get through those will get have more probability getting deployed in the internet than the updated base. So I would rather be happy that if this working group focuses on the smaller document, get them done, and say like, well, we have done our so far we can, and then rest in peace.
Actually, I was the author of the last BIS, and it took me 6 years to complete the work. And to be very honest, I don't know that anyone's changed anything for that doc after. No, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm also pointing out it is a lot of work, even when you're dedicated to it. So I think Soren.
Oh shit. Because every time I go. Soren, please join. Say something. Good to see you, Soren. Soren?
Few observations. I think that there are a lot of work lingering because we were to accident and we didn't finish what we started. And I think that needs to be addressed. I know that we're exigent. I know that we want the perfect thing, yet there are several documents that were not accepted, including mine, for example, for data reduction, as an example. But the fact is that there is work that can be done, and we kind of didn't attack it. So what I suggest is to try to get to the point then we are finishing the 4.2. So I know that it will take time. I don't know if there's a 4.3 in the future. I don't think so. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. There are new technologies in the network, in the memories and all this that could justify. But at this point in time, we have to finish what we started. And I would be very sad to see this group closed, because I think we have something important. And I can tell you that my current company, we're using some of the NVMe stuff. So, you know, it's that's why I want to be sure that all understand that we don't want to close this group. Or maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. So anyways, that was my point.
Okay, so thank you, Soren. This is Brian Plowski, co-chair of the NFSV4 working group. So I agree with you when you said, I think that this very much summarizes, I think, where we are. Finish what we started. That absolutely should be our friggin' tagline, and we should have T-shirts made, because that's, I think, what we're discussing. No one is proposing shutting down the working group and dropping stuff on the floor and watching it bounce. That's not it. The discussion is, what are the things we need to focus on? What are the priorities? And what are the resources necessary to complete it before I am, what did you say, RIP? Yeah, before I am RIP and very, very quiet and 6 feet underground. So I think that's just where we are. And I think part of that goes to, I'm extraordinarily reluctant for proposals of let's do new work of any substantial size. Like let's redo the entire NFS version 4 protocol. That would, I could imagine somebody proposing it. And I would be saying that, no, that's just not where we are. Okay, so the small documents are I would call, not to diminish the amount of work or thinking, but the NVMe document highly leverages the previous work done for PNFS and the layouts, where a lot of thinking went into it, and we're not revisiting that thinking. We're just reflecting where the industry is in this is the third decade of the 21st century, I think. Is that what we're?
Yeah.
2022. So I think that level of work, I think the BIS document just needs. I think the BIS document needs just to finish what we started, completion. I'm afraid to drop. David, help me. Sorry, can I interrupt you, Christoph, for a second? David, can someone give me the strict definition of a BIS document, please? The strict, I was just trying to find it. I really want to know the strict definition of a BIS document.
Strict definition?
Yeah.
Folklore. It evolved as a convenient way to tell someone who's reading the document what it replaces. That's it?
Well, wait, so that can't be it. No. That's, because it's not on the level of discussion of let's NFS version 4, NFSV4 version 2 or anything like that. It's not a minor revision or anything like that of the NFSV4 document. It is revision of the specification.
Right, and let's see. Okay, well, I'm trying to stare at the screen where the font's too small. As I said, BIS had what does BIS mean? I said it really is folklore. It became a convenient way to tell the reader that, in this particular example, this draft is intended to replace RFC 5661, and that's it.
I would have a question. Is there a requirement to do a BIS document ever?
No. So I wanted to, this is Richard.
You just
Yes.
Fine.
No, I just wanted to make some comments around.
Are you both Austrian, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Having had some experience with being an editor for a BIS document, and I can fully agree with David here, a BIS document is really just a convenient way to say something that this document will become the new standard instead of an old standard. It has no meaning bearing whatsoever of the technical contents that are being changed, or if it is just an update because of errata. That has no bearing to one to the other. Other than this, a BIS document that is really just an update for errata, for editorial things, can become a very, very lengthy work, speaking of experience, to very minor gain. So I've been updating the 1323 document to 7323. Nobody actually refers to 7323 by the document name itself because everybody knows the old document. However, if you would nowadays implement the old document specs, it would basically not be compatible with TCP stacks all over the world, or you would have actual bugs in your implementation. So a BIS document that addresses technical and editorial errata is an important aspect, but it's kind of an unloved child kind of thing. A lot of work for very little gain. So from a point I'm making, from a priority perspective, if this BIS document is the kind that I'm referring to with errata, technical and editorial, then I would think the priority to do this and to complete this should be lower than the other documents. If, as you mentioned, or as you alluded earlier, that the BIS document here is really a revamp of the entire document in a major way, then I cannot comment on the relative priorities to this. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Wait, is there anybody? I'm sorry, I gotta bother everybody in a second. Nobody. Okay. Sorry, Christoph.
Yeah, so as someone who's a relative newcomer to the group and comes from more of a storage focus, I mean, one of the big problems with the group is I mean, NFS 4.0 now, originally was a mess that basically wasn't helpful. NFS 4.1 fixed it. Then the group spent a lot of effort on doing the BIS document for NFS 4 that no one really cared about. And now we're trying to do the same for 4.1. And if it was just catching up with the errata, it would be a very simple document. But I think the problem is it's trying to bring over the internationalization rewrite from the 4 BIS document, which in theory is very important. In practice, doesn't matter what the implementations do anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure that's a good priority for the group.
So Jahed, you transported it. I hope, Brian, you get my name.
I got it that time.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, I would like to understand the priority here. I mean, the definition of priority. I mean, definition of priority is like what documents we should take on first and complete, or priority based on like what is needed to get things secure and get things interoperable and get things going. So I'd like to understand that part as well, because I mean, what I'm hearing, like this document is important and it is addressing lots of errata, but nobody cares. That doesn't tell me that like this should get like a lot of attention right now. It could just be there and we can have like very low updates and all these things. But at the same time, if this somebody tells me like I cannot really run this NFSV4 one version because I have all this errata. I have like 100 plus errata, and if I implemented that, then it's like it's not going to work. And this is really important. So please mention like what is your priority, and try to understand like what's the implication we have. If nobody cares about this document, well, I can ask why we started this one. Or something else. What was the history? I'd like to know that as well.
Sorry, there's one person in front of you, and then I'll get to you. Hold on.
Yep.
But I want to make a comment. This is why I was asking about the definition of BIS. I thought that the BIS document started from addressing errata and unclear portions of the specification. That's what I believe was how we started it. When we did new, like when we went from 4.0 to 4.1, it wasn't a BIS document.
It was new
It
version.
was like an
It was
acknowledgement.
right.
Of
It was a new
asteroids,
version
right.
protocol because because you bumped the minor number. I've
Yeah.
also been involved in I wouldn't say involved. That's taking too much credit. In a working group that I run, unfortunately, other people did most of the work. We just turned out a BIS document for SCTP. And that was a rather large doc. I'm sure saw Head Start saw it go by, and it was not all errata, but it was all minor stuff that needed to be fixed. That the implementers agreed this is how it ought to work. So I guess what I would recommend to Zahed is to structure his thinking as an AD around two types of docs. We got these relatively small stuff in which there is strong interest. And then we've got this BIS and the maintenance of the old stuff and the errata, and which is what seems to be causing him loss of sleep. And those two things ought to be thought about separately in figuring out what happens here.
Okay. And I need thank you, David Black. Soren, you're still there? Are you with us?
Yep.
Yeah, please go.
Okay, so look, I'm going to go back to some changes that the industry went through that will require attention. That I'm focusing on my draft for data reduction because that's the place I live in today, and this is the clouds. So all the clouds, the ones that are relevant, Amazon, AWS, Google, GCP, and Microsoft Azure, they all are talking about data reduction because that's an important part of moving to the cloud. So I think from that perspective, this is a new work that should be done in this group. because the clouds are moving faster and we are staying behind if we don't keep up with that. Again, I advocate for my draft as an example, but that should be one of the directions that should happen today, because it is what's happening in the industry. It's not me. It's, I work in a company that does data migration to the cloud, and I can observe all these facts. So that's my point.
Okay. I want to say thank you. Zahed.
Zahed, you're transferred again. So David, I think you made a good point, right? I mean, we have a couple of issues here, and I say like I started with 3. Like, I mean, the question is like I can ask the question about the process and all this thing, and maybe previously made decisions like why this is that and that is that. Like you have like 100+ unverified errata that you started to fix it without any kind of resolution on that. Like even if it's not like verified whole report document, it's like nobody did anything. It has been there for quite a long. And then basically now if I look into this whole thing, the bees, I kind of understand like this bees is supposed to take care of erratas, which are not really we didn't agree on how to solve them. Now when this bees is happening, I expect that discussion to happen. That's not even happening. It's like Dave is pushing his work. He's trying to get reviews. There were a couple of IETF meetings and interim meeting. There was no review. So I kind of felt like this is not like the thing that the working group should focus on. And then it comes to the smaller documents. I would appreciate the authors of this smaller document to get these things to some sort of a state where, like, I mean, I think today we said like we're getting this NVMe document as a working group, and then Dave, you said like, yeah, I'll get something really soon. And there are a couple of documents that we discussed today. It's really, like Tom said, it's almost done. It's just working with last code. So do those things, go for those things, and see like where it ends up. Because I would like to see this working group progress. I'm not here to just click on this button says close this working group. I'm not here for that. I want here to show this working group this progressing. If it is a management issue, how we are running things, we can talk about that one. If it is like encouraging people to do that, we need to do something about it. That's what I'm asking. And today I'm feeling it better. Like we're talking about it. We see like this work need to be done. We want to continue this one. And that's exactly how I want out of this discussion, out of this working group.
Thank you. David Black is going to say something.
Yeah, David Black's going to say something. So there's a lot of NFS out there. There's a lot of running code. A lot of it is not exactly close to the latest docs this working group has produced, to put it politely. And unfortunately, I got a +1 Christoph Snide remark about internationalization. That has a particularly sorry history in NFS that I don't care to go over
Even
further
before
without
the
adult
IETF.
beverages.
It had a sorry history before the IETF, right? And by ignoring it completely.
Somehow, most of the running code seem to do something useful most of the time.
As long as you do it in English.
No, it actually it was actually beyond there, but
Yeah.
but
P3 works
never mind that rat
with
hole.
UTF-8, by the way.
As long as you don't do stupid things like case-sensitive file names, it's perfectly fine with UTF-8.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, never mind. That's a rat hole. Okay.
That's a rat hole
Go ahead.
because case sensitive in Unicode is a rat hole all by itself, which we don't need to explore. I mean, for example, what's the uppercase version of an ASCII lowercase I? Answer: it depends on what locale you're in. Unicode doesn't have a single answer. Never mind.
It might also depend on the version of Unicode. now have encoded in one municipality.
All right. No
Didn't we
comment.
used to have a
Any-
rubber rat in the meetings? Didn't we used to hold up a rat? Go ahead.
So I think the structure here is figure out how to take some of the smaller drafts forward, and then look at the sort of the maintenance of the big docs and the bigger drafts as sort of a separate matter. And if you tease those two apart, at least has a structure to start grappling with what is useful work here, and then figure out what is necessary on the big ones, given the small size of the community.
Yes, and yes, and so let's just, for everybody online, just a reminder, Dave Novak, who is doing most of the work on the BIS document, is not here. And I had a slide early on, which I said I didn't want to talk about the BIS document without Dave not being here, because we're going to be talking about stuff without the background to complete the discussion. So, and Dave did tell me he's not going to be able to give us an assessment of that until a month out. Okay, so I believe that was what he was, we had a brief talk before we talked. So I got it. I think we decided today to shelve 2 documents that are on this list related to the RDMA work, the V2 stuff, and then move forward with the NVMe doc. And people have put their hands up to work on it. And Tom Haynes on the state ID document is moving forward. So I think we made some decisions on the small documents, and then we just got to put them in the milestone list, I believe, is one thing we have to do. Clean what's in the milestone that doesn't need to be there anymore, and then get Dave Novak to come in and give us a do not do on the BIS document and assess what's critical and what's not. Is that, and we're separating out the decisions made on the smaller documents today from the larger pile of the BIS document. I don't think there's anything else. And Brian Plowski, I'm not asking for new work right now, except when Christoph proposes new work. Christoph.
Not proposing new work, but I think one of the big items our AD gave us was errata handling. And I mean, I think one of the problems is we have a lot of old big documents that aren't particularly relevant that have a lot of errata, and a lot of people that worked on them are not actively part of the working group anymore.
RIP.
Another thing with
And
those is,
so what are we going to do about it? Someone needs to spend time on it. I mean, I could volunteer some of my time, but especially for the older stuff like 4.0, I'm not sure I'm even qualified.
well, the thing I was going to point out is the 4.0 stuff might have been taken care of with the BIS. Because at the time I was taking the errata as they arose and was fixing them straight away in the BIS document, but I might not have been communicating that to the chair so that they knew that they were being taken care of.
Well, but that's supposed to be done in the errata tracker, right? So maybe you just need to walk through them and mark them as verified, fixed in the BIS document or something.
Okay, so Christoph, I'm gonna summarize that, and Tom's gonna put a note. Take a note, Tom. That we just got to scrub the errata list and just really scrub it so that people aren't getting nervous, and then determine 2 things. One, which errata we don't care about anymore. You know what? Nobody's using it. We're not going to update documents that no one even cares about. And let's mark. And just, I assume there's a way to close those errata out. And then my thinking was that the BIS document that Dave owns has been primarily working on the existing errata for what people are interested in using, which a lot of what I thought we've discussed in the past, by the way, was just clarifications of the specification describing what we actually meant when we said something. I thought there was a big pile of those, and maybe Dave's gotten through most of them. But let me again follow up with Dave. He's not here. Okay, there's 3 people at the microphone. Is there anybody online that wants to join this conversation? Nope, not yet. Okay, I love it when I go totally infinitely.
Switch it again. Just one minor point that I've not heard you say, and that is adopting of the BIS document as a full feature the working group document so that the working group has formal change control over the document and not the author alone.
Take the BIS into the, sorry, I got
Yes,
distracted.
take the BIS as an working group document.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, that's, yes, got it.
So,
Well, okay.
so Chuck, come to Mike. I mean, if you want to say something about that, but Jahed again, Jahed. So yeah, the errata. If you what you just said, and I see one volunteer to actually go through that one. That would be great. Then we know exactly what you're doing. What are already been taken care of, and what are the different things, and I have a clear idea, like this is like something that I can reflect to when I'm looking through the documents and all these things. That would be a great thing to do. So if you could do that, that's great. Thanks for doing this. And for the practicality, yes, this document need to be in the item. I don't know, like if I have already mentioned a couple of times like this, and there should be adoption call. I think there was adoption call for this document in the working group, or
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
the BIS document is now is the individual document, and yeah, we have asked for the adoption call for
Okay.
that BIS, right? I don't know, like please check that one. I think we have done that.
No,
It's
yeah.
just updating the data tracker then.
Okay, I got it. I think Chuck's gonna say something that's gonna remind us of something that Dave's working on. Chuck Lever.
I think Chuck Lever, Oracle. One of the reasons why this is still a personal draft and not a working group document is because part of the mission of doing this BIS was to recognize that this is an enormous ass piece of work and it needs to be split. So Dave had proposed, I think, splitting it 4 ways into 4 different documents. So I'm not sure about process here, but I don't know if we want to adopt that
Yeah, I got it.
particular document as a working group document, or if we want to see the split documents adopted.
And I'm sorry, that was discussed a very long time ago at this
Yes, it
point,
was.
and agreed to by the working group, primarily because, frankly, anything that's done outside of this working group in terms of editor reviews and everything else, that the size of the document is daunting. It was felt that if it was broken apart with no changes to the protocol itself, and that just the act of breaking the document into 4 pieces, focusing on specific areas, which correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, but like one of the 4 documents would be specifically a security document, which allows outside review of the security portions of the protocol, which aren't necessarily in one location on the document today. So
Right.
it was going to be like pull, focus, would allow for the faster final reviews of this document once it emerged, because it was 4 parts, and respective area expertise can be brought to the document they were interested in without having to wade through the 523 pages they didn't care about.
So,
Okay. Sorry.
and like we don't see on this window in front of us the documents that have expired since January. I think at least 3 of them. And security is not up here because it's expired. So it's hard for us to track the versions of the documents that were the progeny of 5661 BIS. I don't think Dave ever intended 5661 BIS to be adopted as a working group document. He just meant it as the base for doing the split.
Okay.
So just to be clear, I'm not objecting to this work becoming working group documents, but I think that there's some history here that we need to identify.
You're being very specific about what we choose to adopt.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So again, without Dave here, I don't want to say things that I can't speak to. But I have the list of questions and the concern and the asks around, and priorities for the group, I think, general discussion here. in terms of documents, okay? But I need a lot more information from Dave, and I needed
Yeah,
his commentary on
and
it the other day.
yeah, David Black, yes, and yeah, Dave's gonna have a cow when he understands what we did in his absence. I mean, and there's an even bigger question on the table, which is the split worth doing versus stabilizing what we got?
You know, talking about cows. This is Brian Plowski, chair of the NFSV4 working
Yeah,
group,
yeah,
co-chair.
yeah.
No, the cows always come when we submit the document for a review, and then everybody complains to us that they didn't want the meal supersized. They wanted the regular burger, right? And so, I mean, David, you know, we've been friggin' yelled at by not
I
only
know we've
area
been friggin'
directors,
yelled
but
at. What
editors
I'm
and everything else
basically
repeatedly.
what I'm basically asking is it sufficiently important
I got it.
to generate an across the board update that would, as a baseline, result in an enormous document that would then have to be split to get it through? Get it through. Is that whole program of work worth the outcome?
So I will say, sorry, David asked a very good question. Is that whole idea worth the outcome? I would say when we discussed the split, and I cannot remember how long ago, but this was not in the past 3 months. This was in the past 3 years. We discussed this split. I don't think anybody thought we'd be having this discussion today. I think we thought that the split would be completed by now and things would be going along smoothly, and also would have allowed other people within the working group to take the areas they're interested in to review, right? Because we wouldn't be having a discussion of, you know, a bunch of people trying to find the area they need to worry about. So, did you scan in?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm going to think
Okay, but yeah, but if you scan in, then they might not disband us. So, sorry. Thank you. Okay. Is there any? Okay, I think I have. Tom's been taking notes. I hope. I think David Black rewrote all of my notes. I think that was him typing. Which is kind of funny. But I think I have a lot of follow-up. We've taken some actions. When the minutes get published, we'll communicate the actions we took on the documents today. I will talk to priorities on the working group list, and I'm buying into David's model of let's consider 2 piles. One of the smaller docks that people have gravitated towards to drive to completion that we discussed today, and then the BIS document to step back for a second and find out and have that discussion on where are we, what's its purpose, and since nobody's, yeah, let's just leave it at that, okay? But I do need Dave Novak in that discussion, okay? And then at Sid?
Zahid? Yeah. So yeah, I think this has been very fruitful discussion so far. We have at least an idea like what we are supposed to do. We have some action points. I would love to have you or the secretary actually write an email to the mailing list for the record, like this is what we have discussed, this is what we have action points, so that we can follow up on this thing. And for this document, split or not split, I don't mind. Actually, we talk about it again and try to make a good decision. So that's up to the authors and the working group to decide. My personal opinion is like we talk about whenever we have a BIS document is obsoleting, that's a different case. But if it's updating and stuff like that, the ISG usually asks for like what you are, be clear what you are updating and all these things. So the structure of document really matters for that case. But that's a later case. But let's discuss on this when Dave is back.
Okay.
About the split, and then do the right thing. Like split or not split, I don't care. Just adopt the documents and carry on the work in the background. And please keep the data tracker updated.
Yeah, and I know, and sanitize the list, get the drafts up where they need to be in working group drafts, and update the milestones, and scrub that a bit.
Yep.
Just so that people looking from the outside are it's a little bit clearer what we're on.
Yeah, exactly. Because everybody knows this, we are having this discussion today. So that would be good to get them like what exactly we discuss and decide. And that's why asking for written something record in the mailing list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there Tom Talpe?
I just have a random question. Is the charter still current? I mean, I don't want to throw work on the pile, but it seems like, especially if we're going to promote new documents, I'm guilty of not updating a document that's chartered, for instance. Should I?
Let me look at the charter before we start updating documents that are referenced there.
Yeah. Okay.
Please. No, that's I was looking at the milestones and I was going, okay, that's not up to date. And then, but I also want to go through the charter. I remember when we wrote the words for the charter, we left it pretty wide open. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty broad. Yeah.
Well, we were being coached to not paint ourselves into a corner, but also not to. So we'll make sure that it reflects some of the things we talked about today. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If splitting our work into large and small documents sounds like the charter might be impacted slightly.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Thank you. I'm going to say I'm going to say two things. This is the first time we've gotten together since before COVID. Is that face to face? We've had interims and everything virtual. Thank you, Tom, so much for making this a lot smoother than it would have been with only me here. No, it's been a lot more. It's been a much higher bandwidth discussion than I think we've had. And I appreciate the guys virtually, but managing the crowd with some of the crowd here and some of the people online is, to me, a lot easier from a chair position. So this has been a great thank you to people that joined virtually. Thank you to people who showed up physically and for getting all the drafts in before the meeting started. That was super helpful. So this has been great. And I just want to say, going once, going twice, NFSV4 working group is over. Thank you, everyone. You have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
I want a beer. No. I want a beer. I want a beer. All right. Oh, man. That's amazing. I was able to click the screen the entire time with
At least I know how everybody looks like, how come everybody I always get it wrong in terms of when I look into this really tiny window video
Yes.
like Roman the secretary. I mean, I never thought like humanity is so small.
man, you know,
talking with like this.
no, you have no idea. But remember David Black and Chuck? Remember the old days of NFS? There was Robinson, Eisler, and Scheffler, all of whom I had to stand like this and talk to, and then I'd be kind of like going, and Tom, right? So yeah, everybody, we had this oddball genetic thing going on, and that's version 4 of a lot of tall principal contributors. It's really annoying.
I hope this session is not recorded anymore.
It might be. No, I always used on it.
This is the first time meeting, so
Yeah.
this is good. And it's almost time to say goodbye, perhaps, for me.
I was an asset. Then nobody ever really leaves the V4 working group as our area director. Trust me on this one. I caught Magnus out in the hallway. So he saw me coming and he started running. And I said, "Don't you run away from me,
But I would like to talk with you.
Oh, you would? Okay.
You can,
Yeah.
you can go.
I'm just gonna make everybody else leave. Hey, Christoph, when are you leaving?
Tomorrow.
we're gonna drink tonight, right?
Apparently.
Can you? Okay.
We already did last night, but you weren't there.
I know. I was finishing my refrigerator repair. Hold on. Oh, that hurts. Okay, hold on. It's a while. Tomorrow morning. Yeah. Are you busy tonight?
No, but I think it's the first time that I bought myself a social media.
Wow. Oh, shit. I forgot about, I didn't even look at the social. I wasn't.
You need a ticket to the.
No.
One of my, another quick chair, he got COVID positive, so he's not going to.
No. I'm there's somebody coming from out of the area. 5 days. So black.
I'm Devin. There's Victor everywhere.
Is this still on?